And we're live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed. Getting stuck into the new financial year. Tom, how you going? What will the market do, he asks. I don't know. You're the most popular man in, you're the darling of the real estate media at the moment. You can't move without seeing your face somewhere.
Yeah, well, as I was saying to you off air, you need to understand that the way journalists work is they love headlines that are going to get people reading their stuff. And what sells better than anything, unfortunately, misery. Misery, right? What people care about, Phil, they want to hear about, they don't want to hear that 79,500 flights landed properly on that Thursday. What they want to hear about is the one that nearly collided with another aeroplane. And it was a landing where nearly 300 people could have died, right? That's what sells. So what's happened is, whoever it is, and I'm not sure whether it was Daily Mail or whether it was the News Corp or Fairfax. So I do a market wrap every Saturday afternoon. I finish my auctions and I actually just go straight out and tell the results. Unlike other auctioneers, I'm really clear. Phil, I don't, if a property has sold prior, I actually say sold prior. If a property sells on the day, I actually say sold. If a property hasn't sold, I actually say it hasn't sold, this is the market. So often my results are actually quite different to what you see reported in the press, where they say, oh, it was a 60% clearance rate, 70%. Hey, yeah, of course it's 60 or 70%, because when you've got real estate agents that won't answer the phone because their property didn't sell and they don't want to report it, you get all these results as skewed. When you get all these properties, they get withdrawn and pulled off and cancelled. Of course, we know that that's happened generally because there's no buyers for it. So I'm pretty straight out and say this is the number. And the media's picked up on that because it was 1 out of 6. And I think as I got onto my live stream, I said, guys, I've just finished my last auction, bit stressed, 1 out of 6. So what do the newspapers do? Stressed out auctioneer says there's no buyers. That's the way it works, Phil. I know. I come from that world, you know.
Mate, well, I still operate in that world. And I just Googled, just as you were chatting there, Tom, Tom Panos into the Google and clicked on news. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, the four first 5, 6, 7, 8. But let's go through these top ones. 1 day ago, the block auctioneer Tom Panos predicts market to worsen, urges property vendors, sell it now. Next story. 19 minutes ago, Tom. Scary, no buyers at weekend auctions. Next story. 1 day ago, auctioneer Tom Panos says almost no buyers show up at his auctions. Next story. 3 days ago. Stressed buyers panic as home buyer demand collapses. So let's read the story, Tom, on the fly. This was only published a couple of minutes ago. Stressed auctioneer says almost no buyers showed up on weekend. That must be you, a prominent real estate industry coach says he's really stressed after almost no buyers showed up at auctions on the weekend. In the wake of the Reserve Bank's third interest rate hike, auctioneer Tom Panos has called on the RBA to consider the impact of aggressive rate hikes on the real estate market. There's a video, he said this, that, and the other, nothing special. Clickbait. Mr. Panos pointed to a prop track report published by News Corp over the weekend, which provided a suburb-by-suburb breakdown showing a 12-month average prices. There have been 20% drops in 3 months in certain parts, he said. For instance, the Central Coast is one of these. So again, all I've got to say to you is this. The Reserve Bank, please keep your eyes out on real estate. It is having an impact. There is no question about it. It's concerning buyers. We have vendors who have significantly reduced what they are hoping to get.
Yeah. So everything
and it goes on.
Everything there. So one of the things is it's unfiltered. It's all just the truth. And I got to tell you, life's a lot easier saying the truth. It's really fascinating, Phil. I had a real estate agent contact me through social media, and he goes, mate, you know, by bringing the bad news, it's not good. And my response is, there's no such thing as bad news. It's either good for the buyer or it's good for the seller. it's bad for the buyer or it's bad for the seller. I said, what are you worried about? You just match them up. One person is winning out of this, right? Think about it. And if you're really, really smart, I said, I'd get my article and I said, you know, that vendor you've got that's overpriced that won't listen to you? Well, maybe he's going to listen to me. Send him that article. Josh Tesselin, listen to what Josh Tesselin is probably arguably the guy that sells most homes. He spoke at your Innovate conference in February at the casino. He gets my summaries and he gives them to his vendors the night before setting their reserves. And he says, as you're setting your reserve, I want you to listen to what this guy is saying about the current market. It's a lot easier sometimes, Phil, to use third parties to validate what you want to say, you know, because it's not coming from you. It's coming from a party that doesn't have a vested interest in your transaction, you know.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really good point, because what that allows you to do, Tom, with your vendor is to do some open planning where you go, you know, you've obviously had a relationship with them. You've gone down the pathway of listing their property. You said, we'll take it to auction. Hey, here is some information. Listen to this. They listen to it and go, okay, now let's discuss it. And let's work out exactly what we're going to do about it. It's a really smart strategy.
Yeah. And if you know what you'll find is, Phil, as we move in to this changing marketplace that's now starting to have a bit of normality, you'll find that the best real estate agents are the data-driven agents. They're the ones that are actually saying, hey, I want to show you this information. This is what's actually sold in the last 3 weeks, not the last 3 months, because, Phil, it came to my attention that banks have instructed valuers that they don't want data from the start of this year in the comparable sales. They want their valuers to be using comparable sales that are very recent, you know. And I think the data-driven agent is the winning agent in this new marketplace that we're in. But I'm going to, Phil, there are 3 types of properties at the moment that I can see are defying all the odds, right? I see it week in, week out. Property number 1, it's the fully renovated home that has nothing that needs to be done to it. And the reason why is that the buyer that buys that property is normally mindful that building costs have gone through the roof. They're very mindful that if you hire a builder, labor and materials is 30 to 40% more than a year ago. So they think to themselves, why will I go do that when I can buy a ready-made product that needs nothing? Those properties are doing really well. The second of properties that are doing really well is anything that is pretty much over 4 million, 5 million, right? And the reason why is, mate, rich people are still rich. There's a lot of people that have come over from overseas, right? They've brought a heap of money back to Australia post-COVID. They're wealthy. When they hear that rates went up from 2 to 2.5%, man, when you've got 10 million in the bank and you're paying cash for a property, it doesn't hit their radar screen. So you'll find that the expensive properties, they're unaffected. And then the third kind of property is the one which is the property that's just in the perfect spot, the block of land that's in the perfect spot. They're always resilient. So what's really hard at the moment? Properties, as one agent called them, crap properties. Crap properties have got no one looking at them, and it's forcing all the buyers to look at the ones that I've just spoke about. And that's why we're seeing some incredible results.
Do you auction crap properties? Like, do you have a filter where you say, nah, not touching that, send it to someone else? Or you auction anything?
No. So the first part of the thing is, do I auction crap properties? The answer is yes. And then you went, do you ever say no? No, I don't. Because the truth is, when I take a booking, I don't know if it's crap or not. They say, Tom, Saturday, 2:00, Pendle Hill, here's the address. I can tell you when I know it's crap, when I drive up to the property and I see the
park right at the front.
Park at the front, and I look at the real estate agent there by himself on his phone, and normally a vendor sitting there, I know we got a problem. When do I know that I've got a cracker? when I get there and I think to myself, wow, look at this street, not a single car spot, right? So no, I don't. I'm not selective, and I've got to say to you, Phil, every property I go and auction, I think to myself, you know what, man, at the right price, this person's going to be a real winner that's going to buy this property. You got to believe. Like imagine you're auctioning a property, and what's going through your head is someone seriously going to buy this crap? Right. So I don't think that's the energy or mind space you've got to be. For me,
by the way, there's property investors who are very successful by buying inverted commas crap property. It's a strategy for many people because crap property, the ugly ducklings can sometimes become the beautiful swans. I guess, is that the right?
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of value in those less desirable properties. How do you feel when you rock up at an auction and the agent's sitting there? You can see they're downcast. They know no one's turned up. They're going, I haven't marketed this well. The vendor's going to be in their neck. They haven't got anyone turning out for them. You got to ever give them a G up or a pump up to say, don't worry about it. You'll be right.
No, not really. I don't. I'm actually. I actually am not that focused, believe it or not. I'm actually not that focused, Phil. It's you asked, by the way, you ask incredible questions that I've never been asked before. I've never thought of the answer to them. So I've never. So I think I'm thinking as you're talking. I'm far more interested in the vendor and the vendor's property, the vendor's motivation. I'm really, really interested in finding out what the vendor wants me to say. Right? Because I know I'm getting paid a fee via the agent that's been paid by the vendor. And I know that vendor might be totally obsessed with a kitchen that to me might be a standard kitchen. But I also know that person that owns that house, she or he may have spent 4 weeks trying to work out whether to go for beige or light grey on the bench top, right? So I know that they've gone through that process. So I'm really fascinated to find out.
What do you call that? It's really interesting. Do you do that because you want them to feel a sense of satisfaction that they're taking their property to auction, and the fact that you can communicate that they're more satisfied with what the price will be? And if you don't say that sort of stuff when you are auctioning it, they're going to go, well, he didn't sell it very well. What's the psychology of it?
Part of it is that they can see the invisible value that I can't see in a short 5 minutes.
So there is the invisible value. Is that what you call it?
Invisible value. So some homes have got things that are not obvious to the eye unless you've lived there for a long time. And I call that the invisible value that's not available.
That's good. I get that.
So part of it is that. But the other part of it is I don't want the property to get to 900 when they want $1 million, and I don't want them to turn around and say, but Tom didn't even mention the beautiful patio and the fact that we get the incredible sunshine at the back and the fact that we've got 3-phase electricity that can charge 2 Teslas and the fact that we can swim in our water all year round, right? So, and quite frankly, a lot of the times, Phil, I don't even necessarily think those factors are going to mean you're going to get an extra $100,000. But I don't want a vendor sitting there saying, hey, our auctioneer didn't say or perform at the level that we would have thought. And maybe that's why we didn't get our price. Gab Rubenstein once said at a conference, always try and close the door of excuses vendors have as to why their property doesn't sell. Address those issues. You don't want them, Phil, saying, well, it doesn't surprise me because the agent didn't even use the best photographs, or it doesn't surprise me the agent didn't wipe his feet on the mat when he walked in and showed buyers and was careless with it, right? You want to close the door of excuses, But it's taken me a while. You got to remember, there are some days I'll do 16 auctions, right? So for me, it's the 15th auction. but for them, it's their first one ever in their life.
So you told us that your priority is the vendor when you arrive at an auction, and for them to download as much information as possible to you, that you've got good utility of that information, you can use it for what we just spoke about. Then how do you go about absorbing that information? You do 16 auctions, right? You've really got to leverage your short-term memory. So do you just go up to them and go, tell me 10 things about this property very quickly, and they'll just go blah, and you go, okay, got it? Or how do you process it? How do you compute that? How do you extract that? How do you recall that when you're going down a pathway of introducing a property?
Okay, so collecting the information is just asking really high quality questions. Example, I'm just curious, guys, when you bought this home, what was the real driving reason you picked this one, right? Good question. When friends and family visit you, what do they normally say they love about the place when they've spent a few hours here? And then the third question I ask is, when you leave here, what are you going to miss most about this property? Right?
So they're all emotive questions. They're all tapping into people's emotions.
Exactly.
How do you feel about it?
And then exactly. And then what I do feel is I write bullet points, not the whole sentence. I write bullet points on the brochure, right? So my brochure acts as my blueprint on what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. So what they have is 3 or 4 bullet points that the vendor's given me, which are very emotive, right? And then in addition to that, I then have my agent stuff on there. And the agent stuff, just for those that are fascinated and curious, it is start no less than. Basically, the agent has said, don't accept the bid under this figure. So I write that on my brochure. The second thing is VB. What is the vendor bid? And should I be using it? Yes, no. The third thing is the reserve. And then the fourth thing that's written on the brochure is called the vendor take figure, VTF. So the reserve might be 1 million. The vendor take figure might be 950. The vendor bid might be 900. And the start no less than might be 750. So I'm equipped to make sure that everything I need to do is checklisted with the agent. And then I've gone through and got all the information off the vendor as the emotive facts. And then I'll always say to the vendor, I want to let you know that I'm going to be treating this like it's my own home. And I look them in the eye, and I've got to tell you, 80% of the time, I can feel it. I can feel it in their heart. They say, thank you. That means a lot to us. They're stressed. But the good thing about me, Phil, is nearly every one of those vendors has already had a video relationship with me before they sort of and I'll tell you what helps. You know, when we talk about that 1 out of 6 story, if we are $50,000 short, I'll come back and I'll say to the vendors, do you want to keep it or do you want to sell it? We're short. And they'll say, oh, mate, we really wanted a little bit more. And I'll say something along the lines of this. I'll say, guys, can I ask you, what's your understanding of the current market? And a lot of the times, Phil, they say, listen, we follow you. We know, we're reading the press. We know what's going on in the market. This is the first time, Phil, in my 35 years in real estate, where I can tell you the vendors and the agents have the same information of the market. Media has now done the job of vendor management for real estate agents. It's all because of the phone.
Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing?
Many real estate agents don't like to think that the vendor and the agent are at a level playing field in terms of intel and data. Realestate.com's had a lot to do with that, Phil, because realestate.com has brought to the surface all the information.
Oh, it's just democratized. It's democratized information, and that's what it's done. You know, and you can have your own opinion on it. If I had a team of data scientists that watched every single one of your auctions for the last 10 years, and they actually had an understanding of what those KPIs were, as in what's the vendor bid, what is their reserve, what is their take, would they be able to identify any patterns or tells in your auctioneering that would indicate to someone that you're getting close to what the price is? you reckon you're deadpan? You don't give it away?
Another top question.
Yeah. Well, I'm asking, they're asking for all the secrets of success, mate.
I would probably say the one thing that people are very unclear about is when I say this: first, second, third, and final call, all done, all silent. I think most people are confused about whether I'm going to put the hammer down.
Yeah.
And the reason why is if you listen to any of my auctions, I'll normally say this: ladies and gentlemen, I'm letting you know early on, do not wait till you hear the words on the market. I know that many of you are used to hearing the words on the market. I'm letting you know I may or may not use those terms. They're not in the act, and nearly every property that I'm about to sell, you're going to be able to tell. So don't hold back if you don't hear those words. So what I'm doing is I'm taking away something that sometimes stops people from bidding. Phil, because listen, there's a lot of people that say, don't bid till you hear the auctioneer say it's on the market, right? So essentially, if you go to an auction where 3 people have got the same strategy and you've only got 3 bidders, guess what? No one's bidding till they hear the words. So I actually take that out of the equation. So to answer your question, I think you'd pick it up. I think some real estate agents will definitely pick it up, that he's going once, twice, third and final call, and they'll say, I don't think he's going to sell it. And yeah, I think obviously the number that you're at, Phil, highly, like if you're at $100,000 less than the guide and you're threatening, I think a lot of people say there's no way he's going to sell it at that price.
So going back to this recent media, Tom, packaging you up as, you're scared or you're stressed or whatever it was, right? Do you get annoyed? Do you get annoyed with that coverage? Do you sit there just going, no, this is out of context. It's not right, or you just let it wash over and just go, yeah, doesn't matter.
I wasn't affected. There have been times when I've read things. There was one that the Daily Mail did a few months ago that basically said that real estate agents are all going to get unemployed and they're all going to go back to working at Politics menswear. And I never said that. I said that.
What they quoted you to say? Did they quote you saying that?
Yeah. The Daily Mail said he's going to there. This one here, man, not at all, because this one here was a straight transcription of what I said on Facebook. But it says, Tom Panos is stressed. Hey, it was Saturday. I did 1 out of 6. I was driving my car home. I was stressed. Was I stressed 2 hours later when I had a glass of red wine and I was watching the West Tigers on TV? Not really. Was I stressed on Monday morning when I started doing conferences in Melbourne and I was at Ray White's head office? Not really. Am I stressed talking to you right now? Absolutely not. The market and me being stressed about it is not hitting my radar screen. Was I stressed at the time I was taking on that Facebook? Yeah, but not too much. Like the market's the market, Phil.
You're just making good TV. You're just making good TV, Tom.
And I'll tell you, Phil, I've got to tell you, I don't know about you. I don't get stressed, mate. There's one thing I get stressed about, and that is when I've had a CAT scan done and I'm waiting for the results, right? That stresses me, right? It stresses me. I'm stressed last night, My daughter, I've dropped off my daughter off at Oxford Street, Surrey Hills at a restaurant. It's bucketing down rain. I can see she's wearing a T-shirt. I said to her, how are you getting home, sweetie? She goes, I don't know, probably take a bus. And, I've woken up at 1 o'clock and I have a look. She's not in her bedroom. Slightly stressed then, thinking to myself, you know what? But, mate, do you get stressed, Phil?
It's not really part of my makeup. It's I think I'm very good, and people will probably tell you this. I'm very good at compartmentalizing stuff. And I remember I don't know if I told this story before, but I remember my grandmother's house, who grew up in my family grew up in Uguna. She above her phone in their room, and it was an old fibro, housing commission house, and she had this little plaque, and it said, "Today is the tomorrow that you worried about yesterday."
Yeah.
And I still remember that, and I just go, yeah, absolutely, And my wife always she tells a story of her grandfather always told her, "Don't worry about things twice."
I love that. That's beautiful advice.
So simple. Don't worry about things twice.
That's beautiful.
Don't worry about something happening that might not eventuate. So, I try and draw on those maxims, and it sort of gives some sense for perspective, mate.
People feel, as human beings, and the research is very clear in psychology, that the average human being is really bad at forecasting the future. And they'll normally forecast and fortune tell in a far more negative way than in a realistic way. And the reason why is it's probably we're built to protect ourselves from worst case scenario. So our brains automatically go and look at all possible options that might happen. And that's why you have insomnia, because often you're sitting there lying in bed at night, worrying about 99 problems, with 87 of them like never going to happen, but your brain's gone to worst case scenario. But listen, it's easier, Phil, it's easier said than done. Some people have got a predisposition towards worry, a predisposition to looking at the world half empty versus half full. That's the way that we're wired. I meet Sebastian Maniscalco, who's one of the most successful comedians in the world. If you look at dollar value of what they sign up from things like Netflix. I was listening to him on a podcast, and a guy said, "You are the most successful comedian in the world right at this moment." He said, "What drives you to keep, reinventing yourself?" And it was interesting. He said, "The fear that I become irrelevant and that no one pays attention to me, and people listen to other people, and I actually have become forgotten." So some people are driven by avoiding pain, and then some people are driven by a beautiful, bright future. We're all in different categories. What do you reckon you are, Phil? Are you driven? Are you driven for pleasure, or are you driven more for pain avoidance?
I'd probably say the latter, be pain avoidance, I think. It's
probably
to consider that. And to your point around like people who worry and stuff, I'll think of an issue or a circumstance, and I will have a move 10 moves ahead should something eventuate. I will always typically have a strategy and outcome to maneuver through it. And that's a great thing, because if you're prepared for most things, you typically pick it up pretty quickly and run with it. But the secret is making sure that doesn't consume you with worry. It's okay to have options and know how you'll play something should something eventuate, and the different ways to do it. I think that's smart business. But I think a lot of people, and this is what sort of manifests itself into worrying into an anxiety, and anxiety into more significant challenges of mental health. It is in many ways a learned skill, but a lot of people do struggle with it. It's tough. But I'm more of probably a pain avoidance type of person, Tom, rather than a pleasure person, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic in February, March 2020, I was picturing, everything, losing the business. I was picturing staff couldn't pay staff money, so they'd have to go. I pictured all of that. I think at the time I think everyone didn't know what was happening. I remember those first 2, 3, 4 weeks where we were all on high alert. But
a lot of that is survivor mentality, right? People also sort of they're survivors, and you see them all the time, and they're more sort of pain avoidance type people.
Yeah. So one of the things that the real estate agents are going to have to cope with in this market, and I mentioned it in that article, or maybe not that article, but another one, is FOMO has been replaced by FOP, fear of missing out has been replaced by fear of overpaying. So one of the things that agents are facing now is when they're dealing with the buyer is thinking, hey, listen, if I buy this today for 1 million, is there a possibility that after 2 or 3 interest rate rises, this is going to be worth 900? Am I overpaying? And this is the same buyer that also knows that instead of paying 1.1, they're now paying 1. They realize they're buying it at a discount than 3-4 months ago. But nevertheless, Phil, I think it just goes to show how much power pain avoidance has got when buyers are scared to buy because they're worried the asset's going to drop,
Well, that's the inherent learnings of real estate, right? No one wants to buy property that goes down in value. We're all taught from a young age that property should go up in value. And I was chatting with someone today, Alexander, a friend of mine, and he actually referenced he exchanged and then settled on a place. He picked up the keys, I think, on Tuesday, and he's like, "Yeah, I reckon I fopped it, fear of overpaying." He was sort of like wanting to get in the market, and he's bought this place. Come picking up the keys. He's going, "I've probably overpaid it," but he's like, "Doesn't matter. I'm not going to sell it. It'll be fine. It's in a good spot. Good inherent fundamentals. It'll bounce back to where it was once these interest rate environment sort of starts to stabilize. And guess what? In 10 years' time, it's probably going to be worth a lot more than what he paid for it."
Phil, and to everyone listening to this, I'm going to say something to you. I think I am the poster boy for overpaying. I think over the years, I look at my track record of the history. The first one was Forbes Street, Newtown. I bought a property in Newtown for $600,000 when everyone was buying homes for $400,000-$500,000. It was like this guy. We're talking about 25 years ago, right? But guess what, Phil? And people used to laugh at it. I remember the guys from Rain and Horn at Newtown saying, "Mate, out of all the people, it was you." But it was the same people when I sold it a few years later saying, "Man, that is the first thing, Newtown, over $1 million that is a narrow terrace," right? That was the first one. Then there was a block of units, again, overpaid, people laughing about it. Mate, I've paid top dollar in Byron not long ago. The house I live in was top dollar. So here's the point. You're always going to pay top dollar when you buy something that's in a prominent spot. You are going to pay top dollar because other people want it. So then you turn around and say, why do you sometimes buy something really, really cheap? Because no one wants it. And the problem that you have is you might be facing that same issue when it comes time to sell. Because if there wasn't a lot of people looking at it when you were buying, you're going to face the same issue. So whatever your mate said, position, prime real estate. Yeah, I'd love to buy prime real estate at bargain prices, but that's really hard to do, Phil.
Yeah, it is, mate. Well, that's everyone's dream. Tom, it's always good catching up, mate.
Absolutely, Phil. Have a good night. I know you got your offside with 100, 150 people there at Fairmount Resort, and you can tell your business partner, Alex, if he's driven his Tesla there. Has he driven his Tesla there?
Yeah, it's charging just up the front, just here, I think.
I'm going to say it's the one place there that I know has got a Tesla charging spot. So he can plug it in overnight. You enjoy your glasses of red. Have a great day tomorrow, and you'll have 100% on his battery for Tesla.
There you go. Nice one, Tommy.
Signing off.
Okay, bye-bye.